Welcome to this podcast. Is making me thirsty. The number one destination for Seinfeld fans is episode 68. Today's guest is a writer and actress. She was a member of the Groundlings comedy troupe. You know her from the New Adventures of Old Christine, Maggie Winters. You've seen her on Friends, Will and Grace, ER, and Two and a Half Men. And of course, she played George's girlfriend, Maura, in the season 9 Seinfeld episode, The Strongbox. Please welcome Alex Kapp. Alex, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Alex, welcome to the podcast. Dartmouth grad, of course. We're
Of
happy
course.
to hear.
Whatever that means, yes.
Someone smarter than us. We like that. So take us back. 1998. I know you're early in your acting career. You did a little Party of Five, etc. Tell us how the role of Maura came about. Was there an audition? Tell us a little bit about the role of Maura.
Okay. Well, yes, there was an audition. It was weirdly enough, so Seinfeld was shot at, well, you guys know this, but shot at a studio called CBS Radford. So
Radford,
the sleepy little studio. It's just a great place. It's just like this happy, I don't know, everybody loves Radford because you get there and you're like, it's not like high stress. No one's guards are coming after you. Anyway, it was a Saturday morning audition, which I would say I've had one Saturday morning audition in my life, and that would have been for Seinfeld. So this is not a common thing. Unfortunately for me, it came in Friday night. I was already out and drinking. So at that point, when they said you've got an audition for Seinfeld, and this is season 9, so it's not like I'll just do whatever and I'll see if I'll just see what shit flies. It's kind of a lot of pressure. But truth be told, I'd already had a couple. So I was like, well, what's the point of stopping now? So I didn't. But then I went home and then I woke up for this audition and, I didn't feel great. So I put on, I just remember this so well because I was wearing a silk shirt, but I was like super sweating because, I'd been overserved the night before. So right. I kind of fell into this hallway and there were all these people sitting in the hallway. And meanwhile, just for the record, never in a million freaking years was I like, I'm going to book this. It was like such a long shot anyway. And when I walked into the hallway, it was like one well-known or famous actress lined up after the other. And I was like, oh my God, forget it. I'll just do what I got to do and get on out of here and go home and go back to bed. So it came time. And so they called my name. Mark Hirschfeld, casting director, called my name. And I walked in, and in the room was Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. And, it was pretty exciting because it's not like, it's a big deal. And so Jerry was like, I'll be reading with you. So he read with me. And I just remember saying the word no. And I felt like the room shift. And I sort of saw them look at each other, like Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld looked at each other. And I was like, wait, did I just fucking know? Like, I couldn't believe there was a reaction. So I just kind of kept doing my thing. I felt like I kind of nailed it. But I was like, there's no way I'm booking this thing. There's no way. They're going to hire one of the millions of other people in this hallway, including Ileana Douglas, who was also in my episode.
Ah, yes.
So I sat back down, and that's after I was done and my adrenaline had started wearing off. I was like, God, I don't feel great at all. So I was just sort of sitting there, wiping my brow and upper lip. And then a bunch of people went in, and then Mark came back out and he said, all right, everybody, thank you so much. And I just remember picking up my bag and I started out the door, and he's like, wait, Alex, where are you going? I was like, what do you mean? Where am I? I don't know, home. And he's like, no, hold on. You got the part. I was like, what do you mean I got the part? He's like, and then Ileana Douglas stood up and he was like, Ileana, you're going to play this part. And Alex, you just got, that never happens in front of everybody ever. Like, not before or since did I ever book a job I've gotten jobs in the room, but not in front of everybody, which doesn't feel great for the other people. But at that point I was like, sorry. So yeah, I got it. Couldn't believe it. And I went to work that day. We had a table read like 5 minutes later.
This is the story we keep hearing, man. It's crazy.
It was awesome.
It's incredible how they just
yeah.
trying to figure out how they're the only ones that do it that way. It sounds like, right? Where they book you right at the audition, you go right to a table read.
Sometimes Chuck Lorre will take they'll sometimes hire on the spot, which is kind of cool too. Like, I think I actually got 2.5 Men somewhat the same way. But you just are sort of in the room, and Chuck Lorre will make everybody wait. and then you all sit there. Everybody has to go in your category, and then once everybody's gone, then they come back and they say everybody go home except you stay here or something, and you're like, oh, so it's kind of feels shitty because you feel bad for the other people, but then you kind of don't because you've been the other people every other time. So
Right.
it's like, yeah.
So were you just auditioning for Maura? I know you mentioned Elena Douglas. Did she also go out for Maura?
She was also auditioning for Maura.
Oh wow! Well, what's really interesting, you mentioned Larry David was there. I mean, so that was season 9, and the thought was he just came back for the finale, but he was actually in the room for some of these later episodes, huh?
He was in the room. Yeah, he was in the room. It was weird that Jerry Seinfeld. I would have assumed it would have been like Jason Alexander reading with me because at that point they were in the last few episodes. So, but it wasn't. It was Jerry reading with me and Larry right behind him, and I don't think Andy was there. I don't think Andy was in the room, but. And then, I worked with Andy for 5 years after that on Christine. So that was kind of cool.
The no you're referring to is the no that you say to George when he's like, we're breaking up. Your initial, pretty much one of your first lines, if not your first line of the whole show, right? Where you're just like, nope. Like that, I don't know what the word is. I guess it's, ambivalence to getting the role that you mentioned going into the audition is the same sort of flippant attitude that your character has. So maybe having that attitude, it's just, you're just like, no, sorry, not happening. They're just like,
I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes I don't want to put out that I'm like literally having a cocktail and talking about how I was, drunk the night before that audition. I'm not like a big drunk, but I do think sometimes not having the nerves, like sometimes just being a little off can be really helpful. And I think that particular morning also, there was literally zero expectation I was going to get that job. There wasn't a single piece of me, and not in a sad, like I'm a loser way, but just kind of like, I'm not going to get this job. It's the final season of Seinfeld. That's like, it's just, nobody thinks they're going to get that job.
Right. So how does that work? So you got the call Friday night, your agent calls you, you're out doing whatever. And then what, does he tell you anything about the role? Like what it's about? Like who is this Maura girl? Like how do you prepare?
You just get the sides, and then you just look at them, and then you just read them. I mean, there's nothing.
Auditioned for any other Seinfeld episodes to that point?
I don't think I
have heard
actually.
Some have gotten called. We've had a couple of guests who have said they've they've been auditioning for a while, and then they just got.
No, I don't. I think that was it. I think that was why it was cool. I don't think I ever had. I think I'd probably remember.
Were you a fan of the show by this point? I mean,
oh yeah, for sure. But that's why I think it was just so unlikely. It just was so. It was in my mind never going to happen. So the fact that it did happen was pretty awesome.
And what was, you mentioned it was the last season, like, again, your expectations were low and then you got it. It was incredible. Like, what was kind of the vibe on the set? Like, was it business as usual? Just pros?
Yeah, just pro, like, they were such a well-oiled machine. There was no, it was like everybody knew exactly what they were. You just felt like you were in like a world like I'll never have this again. Just every single person there was like at the top of their field. Every camera person, everybody on the crew, all 4, 6. I can't remember. I think is Newman in that one. Was Wayne? I can't remember. But like everybody, and then the guy that he was awesome. The guy that had the part he owned the parrot. The guy with the Phil. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Like he and I were both like, how do we do this? It was great. I've seen him a little bit around. He's a great guy, like just a solid, really good guy, actor, whatever, ever. But it was like there was nothing. It was just there was a little, you could feel a little sort of it's winding down, and a little sort of punchy sadness, a little, I think, knowing that it was almost over. But man almighty, like you do not want to screw around with those people because they are heavyweight comedians and directors and assistant directors and makeup artists. They were all just like at the top of their field. So pretty cool.
Right. And you started in the Groundlings, right? So that's kind of the improv land, if you will.
Yep.
Was this on the set, any of that come up? We had talked to other improv background actors who did kind of were allowed during not during taping, but during rehearsals and stuff like that, to kind of come up with your own thing a little bit here and there. Did any of that go on with you where you were?
I would no more have dared to mess with Larry David's,
We
right?
heard
Like
that a
I
few
was like,
times.
I don't know. I just like there are certain times where I'll just like, if something's really shitty, I'll start messing with it, but not. It's
So
a
the
disrespect
Talking
to
to
a
the
writer's name.
Apple was written that way. The Talking to
But
the Apple was written that way.
I don't
We love
remember. It
that line.
must have been. I would never try to claim credit for that.
Right.
I think that's the line of the show.
It has to have been written. There's
Yeah, but
no.
you
But
delivered it. You delivered it perfectly. Like Howard just said, that's the line of the show for sure.
You have
that's
a
awesome.
brown spot. Yeah, like
Ew, Mr. Apple. It's
yeah.
so weird. So weird. So yeah, I don't think I messed around with any of the writing. I don't think I would have dared mess around with that. And then you asked me something else that I wanted to answer because I can't remember what you just asked me. But it's all the booze. Just kidding. It's my first cocktail.
I guess something like, was there any improv like that happened on set, or
like
something
even
that didn't make the cut?
I don't remember, but what I will say is off camera, like Jason Alexander, I think I will credit forever the Groundlings for starting my career. Like the Groundlings is the greatest melting pot of comedy. It's also, there's all sorts of annoying parts about it, which is just like the lobby alone, just everybody competing to be the funniest guy in the room is exhausting. But I'll tell you what, that place that's what launched everything for me. Like I don't think I would have even gotten in a room the year or two before. Like I booked my first pilot in 1997. So that was like just a year or two before. I would never have even gotten to that place had I not sort of had this. I was getting into the main company right at that same time. So I was pretty skilled. I wasn't a great writer at the Groundlings. I was super resistant to writing and very slow. Like Chris Parnell and I were both.
Yeah, I know you moved from New York City. Like, how did the Groundling things like come about? Like, I mean, obviously there's a ton of talent in that organization. Like anyone that obviously who were you closest with the time you were there?
I came up with I'm really close with Mike McDonald on not some. I mean, yes, we are. He's terrifying, but I just love him more than I just love him. He came up to he's hilarious. Chris Parnell and I were really close. We wrote together a lot. Anna Gasteyer and I came up together, and then it was funny because and Will Forte. Just trying to think of all the people. A bunch of writers.
Auditions for SNL with all that.
No, I didn't want to. It's sort of funny. It's a whole backstory, but I don't like working at night. I know that sounds crazy. So embarrassing. But even when I waited tables, I was like, can I do lunches? I just hate the idea that I can't do anything all day because I know I have to work later. I know how crazy that sounds. But I just wasn't. Crazy. And also, I struggled so much. And I don't want to throw Chris Parnell under the bus because he's a genius. And the best sketch I ever wrote was with Chris. We wrote it together. And holy crap, it was the best thing I ever wrote in the Groundlings. But we were just like, there was a guy named Stephen Cragg, and I just worked on a show, and I just saw that he's one of the exec producers, but this guy like pumped out sketch after sketch, and I was like, God damn it. And some people were like really gifted in improv, and I was always terrified to do improv. I wasn't like, I was only a natural because I'm funny naturally. Like, but there are people, I ended up teaching there for a bit when I was pregnant with my first kid. There are a lot of really humorless people who try to take classes at the Groundlings, and that's an interesting thing too. I wasn't one of them, and I wasn't like I think what it did was give me, like, I wouldn't have done SNL because I just didn't want to write that much. It's too hard. It's too hard.
Fair.
It's a lot. It's hard. Yeah.
That show hasn't been funny in 20 years either. But listen, you just mentioned your kid, and you mentioned off air. You mentioned your kid started watching Seinfeld. She's up to season 8.
Yeah.
What's her? I'm just curious. Like today's younger generation, what's her take on Seinfeld? Does it still resonate? Like,
Oh my God, she thinks it. And I have 2 kids. I have 18, and one's turning 21 on Sunday. But the 18-year-old is watching it, and she's like, "It's the funniest goddamn show on TV." Like she cannot get enough of it. And I'll go up to her room. I'm like, "Are you still?" And she's like, "Yeah, I can't turn it off." It's on a loop now. So she and all of her friends. So it's kind of a weird thing. It's like what happened with Friends a few years ago when that came out on streaming. Everybody watched it. Like I just cut all my hair off, and my friend's 12-year-old daughter was like, "Oh my God, you've got the Rachel." I was like, "No, don't do that," because that's 30 years ago. But yeah, she thinks it's brilliant. It is because it is. It's sort of, it holds up. The first couple seasons are super weird, but then they're just different. But it holds up.
Yeah, I mean we're partial to seasons 3, 5, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 3 and 5 in particular are our favorites. Well, obviously
Why?
what's that? Why?
Why? Yeah.
Oh, we
Like,
do. It's hard to take it, I guess, but it's George. It's the slice of life stuff. His
Yeah, I
that's
think
what I was doing. Yeah.
listen, it's the greatest sitcom ever.
two different shows, really.
I have it back here, but yeah, there's just George and Elaine become two. Not it's not in a bad way. They've become kind of two different characters in the second half of the run. But listen, the ratings speak for themselves. You can't argue with the beauty of this show.
And there's a natural thing, I think. Sorry, I cut you off. Keep going.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say there's always a natural thing with I think with shows that last 10 years, 9 years, something like that. There's this midpoint, and it's usually season 5, which seems like 10 years is a long run for a show. But season 5, like I notice it's still or like a show that's really good that has like, let's just say it's like a single cam comedy that's got some heart, but it's not like they're not very special episodes or anything like that. But it's got a little bit of drama in it. And then all of a sudden they'll start doing like wacky, like music on season 5. I'm like, wait, what are we doing? What are we doing? It's like the franchise changes when the when the actors start making more money and everybody starts making money on the back end. Then all of a sudden they're like milking it. And then it just gets broader and broader and broader until you're like, I don't believe this stupid show anymore. And then you don't want to watch it anymore. And then they get canceled. So you're welcome. I was in that season. So thank you very much. And you're welcome for that.
But hey, you give me that Mr. Apple line any day of the week.
Yeah, right there.
But clearly the show had a huge impact for you on many levels, right? Obviously Andy Ackerman, Julia, Peter Melman. So tell us a little bit about how the whole old Christine thing came about. Was it from this appearance?
Oh, she had no idea who I was. Not a clue.
You're kidding.
And I was like, I met you on Seinfeld. She's like, that's great. And I was like, no idea. Which is totally fine. It wasn't bitchy. It just was.
Right.
She's a busy, very prolific, wealthy, busy woman. So she's not like, hey, that girl was on Seinfeld. I would be willing to bet she never watched any of it ever. She's kind of a regular person on the other side of it. But no, she had no idea. And oh, Christine, what was so great about it is it was after I'd had kids. So I kind of, didn't mean to, but when you get pregnant and have children and then gain 70 pounds on the first one, that changes things for you because you are fat. And then B, also, then you have kids. And so it takes a little chunk out. So I was sort of on the back end of having my kids and just fell into this, it's just an audition like any other audition. And then we went to the table read and I met Trisha, my best friend, and I'm living in her guest house right now. So you can literally when I point, it's because she's right over there. She and I met and there was just this weird chemistry. We just kind of both felt it. And she tells a very famous story. Like we were sitting at the table read. She was very nervous. I love table reads. That's like my sweet spot. I'd rather you hand me the script right there and I'll start it. I don't need to see it first. I just love the spontaneity of that. But so she opened this little decorative pill box and she's like, here, they were like little herbal calm pills. And she opened it and she said, here, do you want? And I literally grabbed it and put it in my mouth and swallowed it. And she's like, did you want to know what that was? And I was like, that's so fine. But we just instantly had this connection and we shot the pilot for Old Christine. And then we got a call, I don't know, a day later saying, hey, we want you as regulars. So it was like the sweetest gig ever because we didn't have to, normally if you're a regular on a show, you have to go through a very long process of audition after work session, audition, network, studio test, network test, maybe another thing. And then eventually they give it to you. This was we had one audition. We each booked a job thinking it was a week. And then we had a job for 5 years.
This
Pretty
is
awesome.
Trisha O'Kelly?
This is Trisha O'Kelly.
That's a great story. And the old Christine show for some reason. I thought that was right after Seinfeld, but that was 8 years after Seinfeld.
No, it was a long time later.
Yeah.
So you also met Andy Ackerman was part of that show. So
Andy remembered me.
So was he an influencer?
He was not.
Of course, but was he an influence at all in casting? No.
You mean? Hold on, you're cutting out a little bit. That's why I'm just because it got choppy.
Sorry.
Was he an influence on me?
Was he yes, but was he an influence in casting you at all, or no? Had nothing to do with that.
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to think so, but I doubt it. I think, but Andy's like the greatest, one of the greatest living human beings of all time. He probably wouldn't have even, so you do whatever you want to do. I don't know actually, but I would like to think that I have to think that having a Seinfeld, nice big juicy guest star in Seinfeld does not hurt anything.
Well, was Hirschfeld the casting director on Old Adventures of New Christine or no?
No, it was Tracy Lillianfield was the first season or two, and then they switched. So, and I'm not sure why. I think she was maybe just the first season or maybe the first pilot, but it was Tracy Lillianfield. But they're all connected. So Tracy has known Mark. They've all known each other forever. And then, but what's weird is Mark Hirschfeld was partners with a casting director named Meg Lieberman, who cast Party of Five. And so that was my first, I had 3 lines on Party of Five. I was just a little kid. And she was friends with another casting director named Marcia Kleinman, who was a friend of my mom's, the only connection I had in Hollywood. And I actually spent the weekend of the riots with Marcia Kleinman, holed up in her apartment because we couldn't leave our houses because LA was on fire. And anyway, she introduced me to Meg, and then eventually Meg gave me a little job on Party. I mean, I auditioned for it, but then and Meg and Mark Hirschfeld were partners. This is a really boring part of my story.
No, listen, we're big Party Five guys. Was it who you, Bailey's boyfriend, a girlfriend?
No, I was literally I had 3 lines. I was like a cashier.
And then tell us a little bit about Peter Melman. So he wasn't on season 9 of Seinfeld. So how'd you get to know him?
I didn't. I didn't really. I mean, that was just kind of like a weird, crossing paths thing. But I didn't know Peter Melman at all. I don't know where you're getting your facts.
We just knew you were on a show. We just thought there was a connection with Seinfeld, but I guess not.
There's no connection. Just all these people work together. So
that's what it sounds
that's the thing. You show up on.
It's a smaller world than we think. I think
it's
is what it
so
is.
much smaller. I just worked for the first time since COVID, and on a Head of the Class reboot, and I was basically playing the same character that I played on Old Christine, which was awesome, with Robin Givens, which was also awesome because it's just so funny because she's. But and all everybody on this thing, I was like, oh my god, it was it's like old home week. It's like a high school reunion every time you go to work on a TV show in LA.
Wait, they're rebooting Ahead of the Class?
Apparently, yes. I'm not apparently. Yes.
Yes.
It was on one. Yeah, for HBO Max. Yes.
Speaking of reunions or parties and things like this, were you at the wrap party for season 9?
Yes.
So
I was at the wrap party for Seinfeld.
Because I was going to say, because that's their last season, so that must have been a pretty big bonanza, no?
It was a huge bonanza on the stage. I have 4 terrible paper photos of the tops of people's heads. There's Jerry making a speech, and it's the heads and a hand in front of it, and there's a little teeny Jerry Seinfeld up making a speech at the end. But yeah, it was awesome and fun, and everybody was crying, and I actually didn't feel stupid being there because I had just been on one, so everybody was nice and kind of knew who I was, so I didn't feel like the loser's little sister who went to the senior fraternity party or whatever. So it was great and celebratory, and everybody was fun and excited and sad and crying, and yeah, it was a blowout, huge, and I'm pretty sure it lasted. I think it was a rager that lasted really late into the night. So, and it was at Radford, which was even sweeter, on their stage.
Everybody loves Radford.
Everybody loves Radford. Yeah, not stage 10. It was the one right when you go. Stage 10 was Maggie Winters. It's the one where you walk straight in, and it doesn't matter. First stage is you drive in the gig.
So you mentioned you just started working again, but I did notice you're a divorce coach.
I am.
So
looking for a new way to describe that, by the way, because I can't stand, because I feel like everyone's like, do you carry a whistle? I'm like, stop it.
But it's just funny. I'm just watching that episode, trying to take you out of that episode. I can't, but George trying to break up with you and trying to, and you just won't allow him. It's just the irony there. Now you're
now I'm a divorce coach. Yeah, there is some irony. I just, in the last, you get to be a certain age, 40 in Hollywood. And if you're not super famous, or famous in my case at all, then you sort of stop working. And not always, but it's harder and harder to get work, or to at least make a living on it. So also you just start feeling bad. I don't want to keep having to be on a diet for the rest of my life. It's weird. I'm a grown up. I have children. I'm a really good mother. I have a life and family and friends. I don't want to just constantly be chasing the next gram of cocaine, which is the acting thing. So I got certified to help people get divorced, which is, a really shitty thing to go through. So it's less shitty when you have somebody who has been through it, who actually knows what you could potentially be facing. And my job is really to like make people behave better.
That's awesome because there's a lot of people that don't behave well. They're in.
It's really gross. And
I've heard a lot
I'm
of horror stories.
and I specialize in working with parents going through divorce whose goal is to keep their family from imploding. Like, it's just, if you don't put your kids first in a divorce, then I don't want to work with you because you're an asshole. Does that make sense?
Agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
amen to
100%
that.
agree. Yeah, totally agree with that.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Like, not just chasing everything. Like, and listen, it's a tough business, right? Like, unless you're on a hit show as a regular on Seinfeld, like, people think it's the glitz and glamour, but no, you're out there like auditioning nonstop, and yeah, you get residual checks from Seinfeld, I assume, here and there, but that's not gonna,
$57.10.
That's that's what it is.
And I get like 3 a year. Yeah, it's not big money on the residual end, and you get you can't use it toward your health insurance after a certain point. So like, Christine, I was making bank in residuals for the first few years because I was a regular, and then after, I think there's just this point, which of course you don't know. I'm not like, if I were going to be in finance or an accountant, I would have been in finance or an accountant, but I'm an actress who went to, and so, yeah, like all of a sudden that ends and you're like, so wait, why can't I just keep getting health insurance off that? They're like, it doesn't work that way. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. So you have to actually keep working to keep your insurance. Right.
Yeah. And I, to your point, like anything, it's a relationship business. So, whether it's staying close with Ackerman or people like that, I think that's important. Obviously, head of the class, you kind of, it seems like you know everybody, so it's good.
Head of the class is Bill Lawrence, and it's funny because Bill Lawrence, who does Ted Lasso, and his wife grew up in New York City. I grew up in New York City with her. She did the door. She was like a bouncer. She was the coolest girl I'd ever met in my life. She ran the door at a club called Nell's in the '80s in New York, and I was an '80s kind of club kid in New York, so. She was like my hero. She was really tall and scary and pretty, and she's still all of those things. Like, she's really tall and scary and pretty and funny as shit. And so anyway, that I had done a pilot with them in 2013 and got fired, and it like took me out at the knees because I was like, yeah, I'm doing this for all the 40-year-old actresses. And I was on my way to go to New York, and my manager was like, yeah, you're out. And I was like, but what? And then just collapsed. And then all of it, everything collapsed, like a whole thing. It was like this long journey of just shit. And then when I just got this job last week, it was an offer, which was the most thrilling thing ever. I was like, an offer? What is that? I haven't heard that word in years. And I burst into tears because I was like, oh my God, it's like full circle, Bill. They didn't hate me. So it was pretty great. The whole week, I was like, I'm so happy to be here. It was awesome. I had like 10 lines, but I mean, I killed it. It was, I'm playing another mean mom. And that, by the way, this last week, Bill was just like, try this, say this now, do this. And then Krista was like, I'm going to do this with you. Just go. And like, we just improv the shit out of it because it's a brand new show and it's a bunch of kids. So we could just do whatever we wanted. And it was super fun. And I'm going back. So it was awesome. I had the best time ever. It was really fun.
Very cool to hear. That's awesome. 80s club kid, Jay. We talked to Jay McInerney, the guy who wrote that TV Guide behind O'Hara there. Were you in his circles at all?
No, but he'd know what my circle was because that's really weird. Yeah, I had I mean, I don't know if you well, you probably did a little intel, but maybe not. Yeah, like I was in my first boyfriend murdered somebody. So in a place in New York.
We're aware, but we stay in our lane. This is a Seinfeld
Oh no, you can
podcast,
see, you can tell. That's fine. Yeah, we won't go into that. But yes, so I do know Jay McInerney. I know, like, we were all in the same idea of a world, and so yes, it was an interesting time.
Yes.
Yeah,
we're like 10 years removed from that
the 80s of New York City. Like, when I think of New York City, that's what I think of. I don't think of
same here.
It was glitzy then, but not like
it was dirty. It was
exactly
scarier.
Right.
There was graffiti. Yeah. There was like this.
It got cleaned up by the time we got there in like the mid to late 90s.
Yeah, like it was not the city. You didn't go on. I mean, like, you didn't take the subway at night. You didn't there's just not. And I lived on the Upper East Side. So I was in this bubble, this little sort of like private school, rich kid bubble, but I wasn't really part of that either. I mean, I was sort of a fraud in that world. So it was definitely an interesting time, but God, it was fun. Like now my mom, if I tell my mom stuff, she's like, I don't know where I was. I was like, I don't know where you were either because you were an 80s parent and also 70s parent. So you were just like going to your Overeaters Anonymous meetings and like going to your community theater plays that you were in and, taking classes and finding yourself. I was your child who was, clubbing and hanging out with people doing drugs at 6 a.m. when I was 15. So that's just what it was back then. It was just a different world.
Yeah. But I mean, kudos to you for having to deal with all that, turned it around, packed your bags, moved to LA, and like you made something of yourself, and you continue to do that. And you pivoted to the divorce coach, and now you got another job. Like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of the American way, and I just salute you for that.
Thank you. I'm having a good week. I will tell you that. I things are going just. I haven't been able to say that in a long time. There's been some dark times, but I'm one of those people that like COVID was the best thing that ever happened. I just had the best time. I just felt like it was the great equalizer, and I didn't have to keep trying to keep up. Plus, remember, I went to this really Tony fancy college too. So in high school, so all my friends are in finance, like, and run freaking hedge funds. So everybody's giving the school $100 million a year, and I'm like, I can't even get. I'm like collecting unemployment. So it's like it's a different. I've got a lot of that coming from all directions, but man almighty, I'm having a really good time in my life right now.
Awesome to hear.
I'm so glad about that.
Well, listen, but before we let you go, Alex, your favorite Seinfeld episode besides the one you were in? Do you have one?
Oh God. I mean, I don't want to be all like generic.
Be generic. I mean, you probably talk about it with your daughter. She probably comes up and mentions some shows, and you probably,
I was trying to think I want to say Soup Nazi, but I guess just because I don't know. That was something that was like an experience that happened so much in my own, because I grew up in New York, and so they really knew New York, even though it was shot here. But there were so many of those people in my life. Like I was friends with my hot dog guy for 25 years, like Basilios. He went back to Greece, but
the New York
I like.
Thing, I was always
sorry
to interrupt. I'm just sorry to interrupt you, but the New York soup Nazi thing always makes me think of Colin Quinn had a joke in his New York story where there's two lines in New York for people that know what they want, people that don't know what they want. Like, you don't know what you want, wait over there next. Like, you don't know what you want, wait over there next. I mean, everyone's got that, and that's basically what the soup Nazi is in a nutshell. But we're not big on catchphrases per se, but the episode itself does capture New York very well, like you said.
I think it's just that kind of thing. Like, I'm still a New Yorker at heart. I mean, I've lived here for 30 years, but I'm still a New Yorker. Like, there's still a weird speed thing. We move a little faster. And, my younger kids going to school there now, she'll never come back, but she's like having the time I had when I was 18, and it's super jealous. But it's funny. You just like, you come back from New York and you're like, why are people standing waiting for the light to change to walk across the street? It's stupid. It's stupid. Just walk across the street. Keep your eyes open. If you don't want to get hit by a car, look at the cars coming. Don't get hit by a car. It's so weird. I don't get it still. So
exactly.
There you go.
New York.
Well, listen, and COVID was, I don't want to say good to us, but it's what
spawned this whole thing.
It spawned this podcast. So there we go.
Did it?
Yeah. Well, we started it pretty much early April, right when the shit hit the fan there.
Good for you. And it's funny, Trisha and I we did just for shits and giggles, we made a video. My older daughter's an editor, whatever. She's a lot of things, but she's a really good editor. And has a big YouTube channel and all that shit. And she was like, I'll edit it for you. So we did one video thinking like, oh, this thing will last. Like, we called it coronavirus back. I mean, it was like brand new. And we ended up doing 41 videos about COVID. And they were I just watched them again because they're actually really funny. And I can't believe we all went through that. Like, I can't believe we were actually hoarding toilet paper in the beginning and like doing puzzles and lighting candles and all. It just kept going. But so it spawned a lot of stuff.
That's on YouTube, those videos?
Oh, it is. I'll send you guys a link. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's called coronavirus isolation. I think that's it with Trisha and Alex. But we just had the best time ever. So hats off to you, because you just stuck in. I mean, I live in a garage, so like I had very little. I can't go anyplace, and both kids were home. It was the worst nightmare. This was supposed to be like an empty nester thing, and then I had a senior in high school, and the other kid was like, I got kicked, school's over, college is over. So I was sleeping in a bed with my daughter for like 6 months. I mean, it was awesome. But yeah, it does make you a little more creative when you're trapped outside. So yeah, it was fun. I loved it.
So
I mean, sorry,
Alex,
when
can we look for Head of the Class? When's that coming out?
I don't know. I'll find out. I was in episode 105 and they went out of order, but so I don't know. I would assume this in the fall, because they're doing, I think there's 10. So, and it's really funny. It was actually kind of great to watch them figure out what it's going to be. They don't want it to be the old one. It's not like they're trying to make it interesting. And these kids were great. There's two adults in their 20s who were playing teachers. They were both great. It was actually really, it got better and better as the week went on. They were just kind of figuring it all out, and it was sort of fun to be part of it. So I think probably the fall, but I'll find out. But
Sweet,
yeah, that was
cool.
great. And yeah, it was cool. So
Cool.
there
Well,
you
Alex,
have it.
yeah, we can't thank you enough again.
This was so much fun. Thank you.
You were
Thank
great.
you. It's
Maura
fun.
will always live in Seinfeld lore. I mean, just classic character on the show. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And if I can ever, you know, I mean, I don't know what I was going to say. If I can ever.
Yes, yeah, we'll go on we'll go on your Corona show next time you.
That's right. All right,
Awesome.
thank you guys so much. That
Thank
was
you,
great.
Alex. Have a
Looking
great
forward
night.
to it.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Alex.
much.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.